Alright, I'm going to hopefully get through this quick because right after the stream, I'm going to leave for the hotel I booked near the racetrack for Atlanta. But welcome everyone to our second Firecracker 400 practice session. This time it will be under sunlight as opposed to under the lights like last night. So this brief graphic of the remaining Firecracker schedule. We're not gonna have any more activity until Monday, June 30th for the live stream WeatherTech Duels at 8:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The following night on Tuesday, we're going to do Fast 6 qualifying. That'll be the first the Fast 6 in the actual race will be only pre-recorded things for Firecracker League this year because of the tight timeline. But the Fast 6 will be at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just as a reminder, the top 3 finishers of both Duel Number 1 and Duel Number 2 will participate in the Fast 6. And of course, on July 4th is the 2025 running of the summer's biggest race, the Firecracker 400. So briefly, real quick, let's take a look at the intro for practice, as well as an update to the crash for last night's practice session. If you missed it, I'll probably post like a highlight video of that crash during practice, but if I can find a way to do it, anyways. But so here's the practice session. So it's gonna be 35 minutes long, like last night. Of course, Daytona, 2.5 mile long tri-oval super speedway with 31 degrees of banking in the corners. And as for the weather, it's a clear 86 degrees Fahrenheit with 12 mile per hour towards the southeast. And by the way, I would love to have 86 degree weather, considering right now and where I'm at, it's like 95. And also, one last thing as a quick update, if I can move my Discord tab over to my main screen real quick. Just a slight spoiler. I already kind of mentioned it a little bit. Spoiler for the last night's session, but here we go. Not that. Whoops. Okay, so spoilers for if you remember during last night's practice stream, there was a multi-car crash involving these following drivers: Johnny Hernandez, Caleb Rose, Jordan Forbes, Alexander Rowe, and Alexander Vitali. All of those drivers will go to a backup for the Firecracker 400, which means they'll start in the rear for that race. And if one of those drivers or all of those drivers actually do manage to finish inside the top 3 in your duels, they will still get the duel points, but they will not be eligible for the Fast 6. So if any of these drivers get in the top 3 for the duels, the next closest driver will essentially move up to move on to the Fast 6. So all these drivers are going to start to the rear and will race their backup cars for the rest of Firecracker League, barring if they crash another car. Anyways, without further ado, let's get this practice stream started so I can head on to the hotel near the racetrack, because that's what I'm gonna do immediately after this conclusion of the stream. So here we go. This time under the daylight, and this is gonna be reflective of our track conditions for both the duels and the Fast 6. So especially for some of these drivers deeper into towards the back half of points, this is gonna be definitely important for them, because even though the max you can get for duels is 4 points if you I gotta look at the graphic again, but I think that's 5 points. I believe it's 5 points. I gotta look at the graphic again. It's been a while. Apologies, but even though 5 points may not sound like a lot, even though these duel points don't really give out a lot compared to a normal race, if you're a driver towards the back half of the points, those points can absolutely make a difference. And it could even make the difference for the championship as well, because our PSL championship last summer was decided determined by just a single point. Riley Spurly lost the championship to Forbes by just a single point. So, yeah. Every point matters here in the Palm Summer League, especially this being a shorter series. So Jason Albert was the first car on track, followed by more cars spotted in here. I think that was Brendan Beal behind the 4 car. I can't hear my keyboard. Yeah, sorry, hear my keyboard. Yeah, so it's Brendan Beal. There was the other driver behind Albert, and you see more drivers coming back on the track with Nathan Stapleton, Matthew Hill, Keyshawn Richardson, Alexander Rowe, who of course was one of those drivers who had to go to a backup car because of that wreck from last night's practice session. Al Bunch, Campbell Marsh out here, the 62 of Patrick Miller, Dylan Matthews in the 49, and Caleb Rose probably got the worst out of all those drivers from last night's wreck. So Jordan Ford, speaking of drivers and backups, currently the fastest on the board with Ryan Wilson, Matthew Hubert, only other drivers put up times thus far. But that's of course going to quickly change. I wish I didn't minimize my points because I don't have access to the points now. Dang it. I guess I'll go on my tablet to access the points. Yeah. Okay, here we go. So Forbes going into this race, defending Firecracker and Series champion, came into race 5th in points, trying to pick off where he left off. And this is, of course, where Forbes got his win last year at this race, I have mentioned, being the defending winner. So Forbes looking to become the only other driver to actually defend their Firecracker win from the previous year. Watch out. Yeah. I don't think anyone's won from last night. When it comes to dangerous pit road mergers, that's Benny Watson, the 79, that had a really close call there. Brian Rodriguez, who of course won Joe Rutt's Daytona 500. Looking to also have lightning strike twice here in the World Center of Racing. Owen Miles in the 96. Behind him is Random J in the 53. Random is another driver who came to this race instead of top. He's actually 10th in points. Best start he's had to a summer season since the 2021 golf summer. Well, Random finished in the top 10 every single golf summer series season, but has yet to even do that in the PSL. Looking to actually end that drought. There's Bibi Ruiz, who of course won the summer kickoff, and it's ironic for the driver who's looking to his inside now, Jack Costin, the 75, and that's Jack Costin, 75. And besides the fact that both these drivers have driven the number 57 in the Palm Summer Week before, Jack Costin had this number last year. Around that corner we just passed, off turn number 2, Haas got into roulette, spinning this 57 out, but both cars got pretty minimal damage. So, unlike those other drivers I mentioned before the start of this session, these two will not go to a backup. Of course, if they can keep, and that's of course barring if they keep these cars clean for this practice and the duels. The Alex Sanvitali is another one. Speaking of those backup drivers, Alex Sanvitali was one of those drivers that had to go to backup car. Daniel Boros, I forgot to mention as well. He's going 3 wide here between the 2 Toyotas. Jordan Stout also in this group. Jordan Stout in this group as well. Came very close to winning the 2021 edition of the Firecracker 400 back in the old Golf Summer Series. Colin Cropley in the 15. Next to 2 Railfan drivers of Beal and Lipsy. Matthew Burnett next to Johnny Hernandez. Burnett came to this race 17th in points. Hernandez 13th in points, I should say, which Johnny did. So approximately these two are in a similar spot when it comes to points. 3 wide once again. We don't have as nearly as aggressive racing this time around like we did last night. But as Madison Chase forced up to the outside, she came into this race all the way down in 33rd in points. Gutierrez, I mentioned, came to this race all the way down in 34th in points last night, despite the speed that team has shown has not been able to put up the results. Nathan Stapleton also struggling as well, currently 30th in points, as I'm about to sneeze. Okay, I wanted to mute myself sneezing because I don't want my mic to freak out. Anyways, so all these drivers here are pretty much deep in the standings, except for Johnny Hernandez. So all these drivers here are basically deep in the standings, trying to get something going here in the summer's biggest race. Well, Matthew Hill, I don't think Hill's that far down in points. No, Matthew Hill's 12th in points. I'm about to sneeze again. God dang it. Okay. Can I not sneeze? Can I further explain who all these drivers are? Anyways, Roberto Crown Jr. came to this race 9th in points, looking for a good run here in the Firecracker League. And this was around the time Crown picked up the pace during last year's PSL. Remember, Crown had, what, 3 straight top 5... I finished at, what, 3 straight top 5 finishes, or top 10 finishes. Was it top 5 or top 10? I think it was top 5 or top 10 during last year's PSL from this race all the way up from Meadowlands, Daytona, and Paris, which was good enough for him to contend for the championship, which he didn't win, but Crown's effort, but Crown looking to become a contender once again for the championship here this year. And Crown was very close to win this race last year too. He was side by side with Random J coming to the white flag on the white flag lap. And of course, there is Anthony Hernandez. Won last year's duel number 2. So the 88 team definitely has some pedigree winning at Daytona before. But they want to win this, but as mentioned basically every year, they want to win the summer's biggest race. All these drivers do, but I imagine Anthony's the most hungriest driver. Johnny and Anthony, the entire Hernandez Racing team is probably the hungriest team out of all the drivers in this field to win the summer's biggest race. Because they've won everything there is to win on this channel except the Firecracker. Anyways, Haley Anderson, your winner from Minnesota, is currently the fastest driver on the board. Every time over 47.506, he's down pit road as of right now. Ryan Wilson, second fastest right now. Dylan Matthews, third fastest. Followed by Matthew Hubert or Gutierrez rounds off the rest of the top 5. So definitely some different names here. So a lot of drivers who weren't really too good last night are showing speed here under the daylight. So question that kind of ponders, are these drivers trying to just, you know, run their cars to see how it is for the race, or are they going to do it for the duels? Because in my eyes, if you're someone towards the backer half of the points, you should definitely treat the duels like an actual full-on race, because those points could definitely, even though again the duels only give you single-digit points, those single-digit points can go a long way. And even for a driver up towards the points, vying for that championship, these duel points could be the factor between winning and losing the championship. There are drivers I mentioned. Here's a pack here. Alex Mullen in the 08. He's currently 7th fastest. And came into this race 35th in the standings, which if this was last year's PSL, that would have been dead last in points. But of course, we have 40 drivers this year, so it's not quite dead last. I already mentioned Alexander Rowe a little bit. Kyler Susstroy also in this group alongside Al Bunch. Al Bunch had several close calls last night while merging back onto the racetrack. And behind him is the 10 of Campbell Marsh. Bunch is currently 10th fastest. Marsh 15th fastest. Susstroy 26th fastest. Matthew Hubert side by side with Dylan Matthews. Of course, Matthews is 3rd fastest as of right now. But Joe T is 8th fastest behind her. Behind Matthews is Joe T, currently 8th fastest. Riley Spurly, 9th fastest right on the board as of right now. Of course, last year's runner-up and last year's Rookie of the Year winner. And Ryan Wilson currently 2nd fastest. So so a lot of the faster cars seemingly in this practice session as well. Staple slows down. I guess he's trying to come back down pit road. Yeah, he is. Looks like Staple is coming down pit road this time by. But seemingly, and Staple's 5th fastest too. So I guess, I don't know if it's just, yeah, a lot of these drivers who are currently fastest on the board are all single file. They were in a pack at one point, which is how they got their fast time to begin with. But definitely very interesting strategy for some of these drivers currently fastest on the board by them mostly running single file all by themselves, away from a pack such as this one. Bradley Ream, of course, who was fastest during last night's practice, isn't finding the same success here as of right now, with a time of with his best lap being 48.1112. Last night, Bradley had a time in the 46-second column. In fact, was the only driver to even do that last night, and so far, the only driver to do it at all during across both our practice sessions thus far. So I guess the 6-team speed isn't quite translating to the daylight, which, of course, with the speed, which, as I mentioned, of course, multiple times, the Firecrackers are ran under the lights, which I suppose is good in that regard. But Bradley's came in this race dead last in points, only has 26 points in the year so far. The next closest driver even to him in points is Daniel Flores, who has a 10-point advantage over him. So, kind of worrying if you're Bradley Ream, because you need to get as many points. I feel like the duels must perform well. Bradley and that team must perform well in the duels to even have a shot of even at least finishing in the top 10 at this point. Championship's out of the question in my eyes. Here's another large pack here of talked about most of these drivers before, but none of these drivers, well, 2 of them aren't backups, that being Johnny and Sam Vitale. Maybe somebody, let's see what some of these drivers had to go to backups. Let's see where they're at. So Johnny and Sam Vitale are in that group. Those Bros. Bros all by himself. Jordan Floor is also all by himself. Kind of a mixed bag when it comes to where the drivers who have to go to backups or where they're at when it comes to this pack. Some are just running by themselves. Others are in a group trying to just see how their car works in the draft. So I was going on board with Brian Rodriguez. Didn't really use this camera last night, but this camera is really good for especially at these super speedway races because you can see where everyone's gonna go, where everyone is, what line they're trying, what line they're running, stuff like that, and you have to deal with that stupid helicopter noise. So that's one pack there. Here's a larger pack here of Jason Albert leading the way. Or about the same size. No, this one's a little larger. No, they're about the same size. About the same size. No, this one's a little larger. So that's another pack. So second group of drivers there. Anderson all by himself. Gutierrez now is fastest time. Anderson down to second. Gutierrez now on top of the board by just 1/1000th of a second. Which of course was the margin of victory for last year's Firecracker 400. 1/1000th of a second between Jordan Flores beating Random J by just that much, by that single margin, by single. That was the difference between Flores and Random last year when it came to the line. But so far here in practice too, that's the margin. That's the difference in lap times for Gutierrez, who's fastest on the board, and Anderson, who falls down to second. And interesting how that number appears, how that number is reappearing again already here in Firecracker Week. There's another group of drivers here. Well, technically 4 group of drivers. Patrick Miller leading the lane to 62. Miller's, of course, Matthew Hill's teammate, and Miller is currently, if I can find his name, 25th in the standings. We're going to talk about Gutierrez. Matthew Burnett. All right, yeah, I talked about where he was in points, right? No, I didn't. No, he's 17th in points. The 2022 GSS run-up. And also a winner at Talladega. So Burnett definitely does how to get around these Crown Jewel Super Speedway events. Alexander Rowe, of course, one of the drivers had to go to a backup car in terms of points. He came to race 22nd after a decent run at Minnesota. Probably could have had a top 5 at Boteki for sure before he was involved in the last second wreck, as we're 3 wide with Burnett in the bottom, forcing Crown to the middle. These group of drivers are still working together here. These group of drivers, these particular group here, they've been pretty much been together. I reckon the past like good 5 to 8 minutes at least. So kudos for them for keeping it straight thus far. So far, no wrecks. Good. This is around the time when that wreck happened. Well, during last night's stream, if you remember. Nathan Stapleton winning away in this group next to teammate Riley Spurly. Of course, Roll Fan and NS Racing for what, the 3rd season in a row here in the Palm Summer League, Sarah Technical Alliance. So both teams work very closely with one another during these races. Kind of like how Joe Gibbs and 2311 work closely with one another, I guess. So Brian Rodriguez here is pulled out of this, as assumed to lead in this pack. He's currently Rodriguez is currently 10th fastest, by the way. So Rodriguez is showing this. So the M&M's Toyota is showing some strength in the summer's biggest race. In practice for the summer's biggest race. Brad Ream right behind him. Random J forced up to the outside. Ruiz trying to move down to the racetrack. Trying to get behind Jack Haas. I was about to pick up Dylan Matthews. Oh, we got a car stalled. That's Alexander Rowe, I believe. What's going on here? Hold on, I got back. I think that was Alexander Rowe. It was a Pontiac. It was a white Pontiac. It had to be Alexander Rowe. What? Or was it just slow? Oh, God, that was... Oh, that was something else. Okay. Alexander Rowe, of course, one of those drivers had to go to a backup car. So he was just slowed down through turns 1 and 2. Whoa, that was very, very dangerous. So he just slowed down. All of a sudden, going through turns 1 and 2, and he just comes to the bottom of the racetrack down the back shoulder on the apron. It just comes to a stop. I don't know what happened there. I don't know if something... Obviously, something mechanical... There's something mechanically wrong with that car, but it's out of gas. The starter... I don't know. So we don't know what's going on with that car. Of course, as I mentioned, this is his backup car. And it is having issues here. Not a good Firecracker leak. So far, an absolute nightmare of a Firecracker leak for Alexander Rowe in that 63 team. Just... yikes. And Rowe, of course, is... I mentioned Rowe. He came to this race 22nd the points. Definitely needing a good points day after the lost points day in Japan. And I guess it's just... And of course, Rowe's making his first ever Firecracker start. So I guess just as the welcome to Daytona moment for that team. You know, Gutierrez is still ahead of... You know, Gutierrez is still the fastest lap. So that's the fastest lap as of right now. And of course, if you remember back to our preseason Thunder at Talladega, this team's going by pretty fast. Last night felt like it was a lot longer. But anyways, Gutierrez, if you remember during our preseason Thunder at Talladega, he was the fastest driver for that particular session. Could he potentially do the same thing here? Of course, Talladega was ran under daylight conditions because Talladega doesn't have any lights. And Gutierrez is a former summer kickoff winner, winning the 2024 last year's edition at Tennessee, which was of course a day race. So Gutierrez, I guess, one driver to watch out for when it comes to these day super speedway races. So there's Rowe back on track. Let's see, somehow got to get that they get that car going. Although, how fast is he when it comes to times? 21st. Okay. Oh, we got 3x3 action here. This is probably the closest you're gonna... Whoa, Patrick Miller nearly came down a bunch. That could have been a disaster there. That could have been easily a massive wreck of how many drivers are in here, in this particular group. Thankfully, it wasn't. So this is gonna be probably similar racing you're gonna see at the Duels on Monday night. And it's gonna be interesting to see, because will these drivers go aggressive in the Duels? Will they go 3 wide like how a normal Daytona race would be, or would it be more conservative? Would they do smaller 2 wide packs? Almost like, well, maybe not necessarily next gen gridlock style, but just smaller packs. Point and simply. I've been on board with someone for a while. Let's see who I can go on board with. Johnny Hernandez going back on track. Watch out. That's gonna ruin a potentially good lap time there for Brian Rodriguez. Let's go on board with Matthew Burnett. I had to run and check on something, so that was a good segue, I guess, for me being on board there for quite a bit of time. But you can see a lot of drivers in this pack now. Poor Jordan Stout says, nope, I'm not dealing with that. And that's going to essentially split this pack up now. Probably the biggest pack we've seen so far in practice, in April practice sessions. Oh, Sam Vitali, watch out. Is he still as well? Oh no, he's just trying to get it off, trying to warm it up here. There's Reem trying to look to the inside of Haas there, but instead falls in line. Gutierrez still the fastest driver on the board. Anderson and Bergem making it the top 3. Let's just try Marsh to make up the rest of the top 5. As for some of the drivers swallowers on the board, 2023 Firecracker winner is one of them. Nick Sand, the 20 swallows right now. Brendan Beal, also you're defending your 2023 PSL champions, so the 2023 winners of the championship and the Firecracker. Not picking up the lap time so far. Nick Sand just sitting similar to last night. Nick Sand is the only driver as of right now to put a time swallowed in 47 seconds. Currently 48.068 for the driver of the 20. It's very similar to what happened last night, though that's going to change right now. Still, swallowed time for Nick Sand. Brendan Beal also still 39th. Albert 38th. Rose 37th, so I guess Relfan team not finding too much speed even with the backup car. Colin Cropway 36th. Burnett 35th. Daniel Voyle is 34th. Rowley Spurly, who was at one point in the top 10, is 33rd. There's also one of these drivers in this group, 3 wide of Anthony Hernandez and Random J. Well, Joe T is 32nd fastest. So despite the change of track conditions here at Daytona, interesting to see that we see some drivers still seemingly struggling to find any speed in these packs despite the different conditions. So that's, I guess, the hiatus. I guess that's the time between now and the duels, which of course, again, we're not having on-track activity on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. I guess this will give these drivers an opportunity who aren't happy with their cars to potentially work on them and get them race ready, get them set up for race conditions. Meanwhile, still have 12 minutes remaining here. Still, obviously, some time to put up a good lap. But usually, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, when it comes to our practice sessions here, usually well, I think it's been a few times when someone put up like a good lap at the last second. But usually when someone puts up a really good lap, it's usually towards the middle of the session, they usually more or less stay like that for the remainder of the practice session. But, of course, anything can happen here at Daytona. We saw that last night with that wreck. That generally caught me off guard. I sim these, I do sim these testing, like these practice sessions, obviously in advance. So I can save them as a replay, and if the game crashes or something like that, I can just go back to it. If I'm missing a beat, that of course happened several times when I've live streamed NR stuff before. But I usually don't expect, I usually normally not really like watch them. I don't know what to expect from these sessions, but we never really see, well, except Atlanta, the 2014 Atlanta reuse in the past. They always had wrecks, but Daytona, we never had wrecks here for practice. So Natale checking up to the outside. I guess he's anticipating someone to come down. Yeah, there's drivers down pit road there. Gutierrez and Jason Albert. Yeah, Gutierrez definitely, you know, if I'm Gutierrez, I wouldn't be surprised if Gutierrez were to just run single car laps for the remainder of the session. Not to mention too, Gutierrez is, since he is deeper in the point standings, currently 34th in the standings, he is going to start towards the back in duel number 2. So that's going to give a decent chance for Gutierrez, if he's truly happy with this car in this pack, he can just sort of sit around the back in the duel race, starting the back at Daytona, starting the back for the Firecracker, and, you know, make his way up to the front. Assuming, of course, if that car is good as advertised here in this session. Now, Brad Ream, of course, he had the fastest lap last night. He's still he's 29th as of right now. Let's see some other drivers back here. Staple 25th, Random 26th. Spurly back up to 18th. Anthony Hernandez up to 20th. Definitely improvement for that team after last night. Still not something you expect for one of the channel veterans. Forbes, last year's winner in the backup, of course, 13th. Jordan Stout, 11th. But top 5 remains some minor changes to the top 5, but Gutierrez still the fastest driver, followed by Anderson Jackson Bergem, Kyler Sustry, and Campbell Marsh. So 3 rookies make up some of your fastest drivers in this top 5. So pretty impressive showing for the rookie class this year in the Palm Summer League, which could possibly be the best rookie class, most stacked rookie class we've seen. As we look at the points right now, Rodriguez is 2nd in points. Watson is 4th in points. Ruiz, of course, Ruiz and Haley Anderson are winners so far this summer. Anderson's up to 16 points after that win. Ruiz is 6th in points and was a point leader going into Minnesota as well. Whoa, Marsh again. Oh boy. I think race officials may need to have a word with Al Bunch in 81. Because that literally happened last night as well. He was in that part of the racetrack where he probably shouldn't merge. That is not a good place to merge whatsoever. And if the Firecracker has green flag, we never had really any green flag pit stops in the Firecracker 4. Yeah, we never really had any green flag pit stops in the Firecracker 400. And if we do, yeah, I would be really careful for Marsh. I would not want to be in front of him. But he is 10th fastest, so at least has a good car. At least he has a good car. But yeah, as I was saying, our rookie class this year potentially be one of the is really stacked, considering 2 rookies have already won this year. Of course, Brian Rodriguez got a pole for the summer kickoff at Armory Digital, so he could, and from being 2nd in points and starting up front in the duels, could definitely be a factor for the Firecracker 400 pole for the pole position for this race. And of course, Benny Watson has come up close during our last 2 PSL races. Of course, led coming to the white flag in Japan, finished 2nd in that race before this driver here, Caleb Rose, got around him. And was also leading late in the Minnesota before Haley Anderson got around him. So, very stacked rookie class, to say the least, in my eyes at least. Here's some 3-0 action with Anthony Hernandez forced up to the outside. Nathan Stapleton in the middle trying to side draft him. Spurly on the inside. Yeah, this session's going a lot faster than yesterday. Yesterday, I guess mainly because yesterday went kind of long because of the wreck and everything like that. But so far, no wrecks. No wrecks. I like when there's not many wrecks, especially for the biggest race of the season. Now, another one of those drivers up in the points is Keyshawn Richardson in 3rd. Came to 7 points back from Brendan Beal. Of course, Keyshawn is a former channel champion, but hasn't won a race on the channel since the 2021 Madhouse Classic at Bowman Gray. So it's definitely been a long time since the driver of the 24 has won a race on the channel. By the way, a few days ago was Keyshawn Richardson or X-Man's birthday, so happy belated birthday to X-Man / Keyshawn Richardson if you are watching. It's been one of the longest. I've known him for years. Really chill guy, and he's been, of course, racing in our channel, since the very beginning. I always appreciate the people. There's not many left because a lot of them have either skipped a few. Some of them have skipped series. Some of them are just not racing anymore. But anyone who did sign up, but still, regardless, I appreciate anyone who has signed up, who has signed up in the series. Regardless if this is your first ever time signing up for one of my series, or if this is or if you've been in every single one of them. It really does mean the world to me that there's hundreds and not thousands of NR. There's like dozens, if not hundreds, of offline NR series out there. Really I do appreciate that you're able to choose my series out of all the series out there. Anyways, approximately 5.5 minutes remain in our this final Firecracker 400 practice before the duels and the actual main event itself. Still nothing too much new with the top 10 leaderboards. Look at some of the other drivers below the top 10. Not really too much change as of right now. I wish there's a metric in NR where you can just do like best lap averages as opposed to like a fastest lap and everything like that. Pretty mod for that, I don't know. See, Nick Sand's still struggling with time. Nick Sand's in this group too. Speaking of the double. So Nick Sand's still struggling with his car, so. And this is even with Nick, and Nick Sand's been in the pack from most of the second half of the session, and that's a lap he had during the second session. And you can see, last lap, 48.27. Well, I think everyone's tired. Well, I think everyone's starting to get times in the 48s because they've been on, because this, of course, hottest racetrack. there's not really too much grip around here. And these drivers have ran several laps, probably over almost a full race worth of laps on these tires. So these tires definitely not gonna. They're gonna, of course, slow these drivers down. But still, you'd imagine. But you think someone who's won the Firecracker before was in last year's Fast 6. Definitely had a car capable of winning last year's race before he got taken down the big one. Kind of shocking to me that Nick Chan struggled. Now, Alex Vitali now has cracked the top 10 in his backup car. But of course, he has another one. But of course, since he went to the backup car, you have to start in the race in the tail end of the field. And speaking of which, Jordan Flores is approaching one of the other drivers, going to a backup. Flores moved up to all 13th. Not too bad for the reigning Firecracker and series champion. Especially in the car, he's just trying to sort of learn the ropes in for the dual race on Monday. And for the dual race, I'll try to make it as close. I already have an idea of how I'm gonna stream that race. Of course, it's gonna be live stream, but it's definitely gonna be different from say this because it's just a practice session. But I'm gonna try making the duel feel like an actual pre-recorded race as close as I humanly can. Obviously, it's not gonna be the same. I'm not gonna have the green flag graphic. I'm not gonna have the flag graphic where the ticker is. I'm not gonna have the onboard graphics. It's gonna be a little sloppy because again, it is a live stream race. It's supposed to be recorded, but I'm gonna try to make it. I'm gonna make it feel like it's a pre-recorded race. I'm gonna try getting that same feeling. I'm gonna try capturing that same feeling as best as I possibly can. Or, if you know what I mean. Now here's the biggest pack right now in the field. There's one driver's 3 wide. There's one driver in the outside lane going 3 wide. This might be the racing, in my opinion, we could maybe see in the duels, considering the duels are longer this year, but still shorter races than duels. Like this, 2x2 stuff. Nothing too, only getting aggressive, only getting a little dicey and aggressive, just a little bit, possibly towards the end. Because that's been the case with the WeatherTech duels these last 2 years. They still have kind of slow for the first few laps or so, but towards the final laps of the race, that's when everyone's sort of aggressive and dicey, trying to get those bonus points. And we've had some close side-by-side finishes in the duels as well. So yeah, you never know what happens at these Daytona duels. Speaking of 2x2 packs, there's another one here. Albert was one of the first drivers out, but despite that, he's 39th fastest on the board. I think all these drivers, let's see where all these drivers are in this group. Owen's 20th, Vitali 10th, Rodriguez 24th, Forbes 13th, and Crown 33rd, so kind of a mixed bag all over the place. When it comes to that group, these guys have separated a little bit. 3 wide again. This is Ruiz forced up the outside, Sush in the middle, and Ryan Wilson from Gutierrez rocketing past by those two on the inside. They're approaching the final minute here in the final Firecracker 400 practice session for this year. And barring any last-second incredible last lap, something like Jose Angel Gutierrez is gonna have the fastest time. And of course, I'm gonna go through all the results. I'm gonna try posting the results immediately after the stream. But of course, also after the stream, I'm gonna probably be on the road to my hotel for the racetrack. So I definitely gotta, get everything going here. But still, even though it's a shorter Firecracker League, these are still really cool. It's still real cool to have I feel like every NR series has its crown jewel race. Most of the time, it's their Daytona 500. But when I started doing the series, I wanted to, try something different. Where seemingly every other series has Daytona as the season opener, as like the biggest race. I'm like, everyone. Something fell down. Whoops. But as I was saying, like, when I started during the series, I wanted to do something different with how I do my Daytona race. Everyone has a Daytona race as like the biggest race of the year, which is fine, which makes sense, it's Daytona. But it's always the first race of the year. I'm like, everyone always has Daytona as the season opener, biggest race of the year. I want to do something a little different. So, and plus, it's during the summer, during the 4th of July weekend. And it was around the time they got rid of the Firecracker 400 in real life when they moved to August. So I was like, you know what? let's have my big Daytona race on the 4th of July as the Firecracker 400 as opposed to the season opener. But yeah. Anyways, on to the result. Enough of me yapping. Let's look at the results for our second Firecracker 400 practice for 2025. So Gutierrez is the fastest driver on the board for 47.505. He beats Haley Anderson's fastest lap by just 1/1000th of a second. That number coming up again here in Firecracker League after last year's finish. But Anderson, winner from Minnesota, will finish second. It's the highest placing rookie. Jaxon Bergem third. Kyle Sushai fourth, followed by Campbell Marsh, Patrick Miller, Alex Mullen, Johnny Hernandez, Benny Watson, and Alex Sanvitali. Al Bunch is 11th, followed by Jordan Stout, Jordan Forbes, Philip Torres, Madison Chase, Jack Haas, Ryan Wilson, Brad Ream, Spurly, and Owen Miles round off the rest of the top 20. Starting in 21st, Anthony Hernandez, then Dylan Matthews, Matthew Hubert, Brian Rodriguez, Keyshawn Richardson, Nathan Stapleton, Random J, Matthew Burnett, Alexander Rowe, and Matthew Hill. So the Pontiacs didn't do too well compared to as supposed. So the Pontiacs definitely had a much worse day for practice. Supposed to last night where 3 out of the 4 Pontiacs made up the top 10, while the highest placing Pontiac is Jordan Stout's 12th fastest speed. As for everybody else, Lipsy 31st, followed by Baby Roulettes, Roberto Crown, Colin Cropley, Brendan Beal, Caleb Rose, Joe T, Daniel Voiles, Jason Albert, and Nick Sant make up the rest of your practice results. Of course, I will post all the I'm sure I should post the practice results here immediately after the end of the stream, unless I fall asleep and forget again. But of course, as a reminder, Firecracker Week will take a hiatus from tomorrow to Sunday because I'll be at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. I am not calling it Echo Park, but we will pick right back up on Monday with the running of the WeatherTech Duels, which will be live streamed this time around at 8:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tuesday will be Fast 6 for the Firecracker 400, the top 3 finishers again from each duel race. I'll actually pull up the duel format. Let me get my PowerPoint stuff open. Let me pull up the duel format since we're here. There you go. Here we go. So since we're here, it looks like the dual format. So the dual format's the same as it was the last 2 years, but it's a little bit different. Obviously, they're going to be live stream, and the duels are longer this year. They're going to be 14 laps as opposed to the former 9 laps. So longer races, which should be interesting. More opportunities for drivers to earn points. So duel number 1 will consist of the drivers in the opposition points. So first, third, fifth, etc. That will set the inside spots. While duel number 2 will consist of drivers in even positions and points, for second, fourth, sixth, eighth points, etc., and also set the outside spots at least for rows 4 to 20. This should say 20, but this should say 20 instead of 18. But you get my idea. So the top 2 finishers of each duel also get bonus points. So first place gets 3 points. Second place gets 2 points, while third place gets a single point. Also, the driver who leads most laps will also receive a bonus point. So maximum of 4 points someone could score in a duel. I thought it was 5, but it's 4. And of course, the winner of each duel will move on to the Fast 6 to set rows 1 to 3. And again, that'll be on Monday, June 30th at 8:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, live stream to the channel. Then the next night will be the Fast 6 qualifying on Tuesday, July 1st. That'll be pre-recorded at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And also, we new this year, a random draw will determine the order each Fast 6 driver will go out in. And of course, on July 4th, on Independence Day itself, will be the summer's biggest race, the Firecracker 400 at 7:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But that should do it for me here. As always, y'all, thank you guys for watching this practice stream. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And I'll see y'all for the next Firecracker Week event, which is, of course, the WeatherTech Duels on Monday. Also, hope for a good race at the Atlanta Motor Speedway this week for both Xfinity and Cup. That should be cool, too. But yeah, thank y'all for watching.